أهلا بكم في CNN الاقتصادية. يشرفنا في اليوم الأول من انطلاقنا أن نرحب بمراسل CNN الاقتصادي العالمي ريتشارد كويست الذي واكب أهم المحطات الاقتصادية على مدى عقود. ريتشارد، مرحبا بك.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. Congratulations on your launch. An exciting day. And, as the days turns into weeks and the weeks into months, you'll become part of everyday coverage, making it so important to explain the business world.
على أمل أن يتحقق ذلك، ريتشارد، أنت من المشاركين الدائمين والأساسيين في منتدى دافوس، فبحسب خبرتك ما أهم المواضيع التي ستناقش هذا العام في المنتدى؟
I think there's going to be several, and they're all intermingled. They overlap. You can't necessarily just pull one out. Now, the Davos theme is cooperation in a fragmented world or something like that. Everybody tends to sort of ignore that in terms of the big discussion points. You're really looking at, number one, the war in Ukraine and how that is going to affect countries more in Europe, energy prices. So that's going to be huge. Number two, China re-entering the global economy after its COVID debacle and still suffering very badly. Number three, always there, climate change and how that's going to be navigated, negotiated. What's the next thing? And I think after all of that, on top of it, you can put global recession, because that is the fundamental fear that exists at the moment, that certainly Europe, large parts of the world, the emerging markets, and probably the US will go into recession.
انطلاقا مما يشهده العالم منذ العام الماضي، برأيك أي مناطق مرجح أن تشهد ركودا هذا العام وما مدى شدته؟
We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of debate about whether the US will or will not. I happen to think it doesn't really matter. The US is going to be growing very slowly, and it will feel like a recession as unemployment rises. The UK is in a really bad way. The EU not very good either. And even those countries in EMEA, even in the Gulf, that may be growing faster, that may have enjoyed growth, will still feel the cold winds, because energy prices have been high. And yes, that has certainly boosted the economies of oil-producing nations. But if your tourists can't afford to come and visit, and if your capex is going to be constrained, and if your dollar-related investments, well, they may be doing good because of the currency, but interest rates are going up as well. You end up with a very precarious position for just about everyone. And emerging markets will have it tough, and developing world will be really badly hit, as we heard this week from the World Bank, which talked about how many emerging markets and developing economies will go into recession and be hit badly.
هل تعتقد أن تدابير زيادة معدلات الفوائد لمكافحة التضخم ستستمر في العام الحالي وبالوتيرة نفسها في الاقتصادات العالمية الكبرى مثل الولايات المتحدة والاتحاد الأوروبي والصين واليابان؟ بالطبع هناك تداعيات على هذه السياسة التشددية، فما مخاطر الاستمرار في رفع أسعار الفائدة؟
Well, we're at that interesting moment where an enormous amount of medicine has been given to the patient in the United States, in the UK, in the EU, and we know that monetary policy, raising interest rates, takes time to work, 6 to 9 months. So for the last 6 to 9 months, we have been feeding medicine to the patient of the global economy to slow down inflation. And we are seeing evidence of that this week. If you look at the numbers, there's real evidence that inflation is off the boil. But do central banks take it easy? Wait and see. Because the risk is do too much now, and you really will tip the economy into recession. And so what we are expecting at the next meeting of the Fed is a much smaller rate rise. Remember, they've done 4.75%. Now, this one is likely to be more of the magnitude of 0.25%. So a little bit more by everybody and a wait and see that inflation has properly been tamed. Because what they don't want to do is come back to have to do this again. They don't want to ease off only to find inflation roar back. Because there are some very specific, unique qualities about this, particularly about the jobs and labour market, that gives them cause for worry.
بالحديث عن الولايات المتحدة، هل سيتطرق منتدى دافوس إلى احتمالات تخلف الولايات المتحدة عن سداد ديونها في منتصف هذا العام، خاصة أن مجلس النواب الجمهوري الجديد يهدد بجعل رفع سقف الديون قضية عالمية كبرى؟
I would not think that serious people will spend more than 5 seconds debating it in terms of a realistic possibility. I think there'll be a lot of political debate about how far will the Republicans push towards that, or the new far right in the House. But it is so unthinkable. It is so extreme. It is so off this planet that the US would default on its debt. I guarantee you this, if there is a serious, note I use the word serious, risk of a US default, then all bets are off for all of us. You may as well turn off the lights on the way out. So at Davos, they will talk about it as a negotiating ploy, as a noise and fury. And what they might say is that between reality and posturing, things can go wrong. Yes, it's possible you have a slip and suddenly something does default or something goes wrong, and that would be calamitous. Absolutely downright dreadful.
إذا ريتشارد، قبل أن نختم، هل هناك تصور بأن الشرق الأوسط وتحديداً الخليج سيكون أفضل حالاً، ولماذا؟ وما التحديات التي تراها لاقتصادات الخليج؟
Well, you know, why are they faring better? They're faring better because they're oil-based economies. And therefore, with oil being high last year and even still in demand, then they do quite well. I think they're going to fare as well as any and probably better than most. But they've got tourism to worry about. Now, you've got Chinese coming back in, particularly for the UAE, for Dubai, for the major tourist destinations like Bahrain. You've got tourists from China coming back. You're not going to have the high spenders from Europe and the United States in as many numbers unless they start lowering prices. I mean, you know, make the offering more attractive financially. As for the investment, I think Saudi remains the one to watch. How far the Vision 2030 continues to push forward, even at a time of greater economic difficulties elsewhere. How far that becomes an engine driving everybody else. But at the moment, it would be a wise GCC that decided, hang on, let's see where the disasters are before we get ourselves into trouble.
ريتشارد كويست، شكراً جزيلاً لك على هذه المقابلة.
I look forward to many more in the future.